The Damascus apartment felt too large for one person. Amara Khalil sat on the hardwood floor surrounded by cardboard boxes, each one representing a piece of the life she was about to dismantle. 4 years of marriage reduced to carefully labeled containers, books, kitchen items, wedding gifts still in their original packaging. The divorce papers lay on the coffee table like an accusation. She'd signed her name 3 hours ago, the pen shaking in her grip, tears blurring the words until they became abstract shapes rather than the legal dissolution of forever. Midnight. Rami would be home at midnight, returning from his latest humanitarian mission in Syria. 6 months this time. 6 months of sporadic satellite calls, cryptic messages about being safe, and the constant gnawing fear that one day the call would come from someone else, telling her he wasn't coming home at all. Amara picked up her phone, scrolling through their message history. The gaps between conversations told their own story: days, sometimes weeks of silence while he worked in war zones, refugee camps, disaster areas. Places where connection was luxury and survival was currency. "I love you," his last message read, sent 3 weeks ago. "2 more days and I'm home. I can't wait to hold you." She'd typed and deleted 17 responses before settling on a simple heart emoji. What else could she say? That she was done waiting? That love wasn't enough when fear consumed everything else? Her sister Layla had been blunt when Amara called to tell her about the divorce papers. "You've been a widow to his hero complex for 4 years. At some point, you have to choose yourself." But sitting here in the quiet apartment, surrounded by the ghost of their life together, Amara wondered if choosing herself meant losing the only man she'd ever truly loved. The clock read 11:15. 45 minutes until their marriage officially ended. Amara stood, walking to the window that overlooked Amman's glittering lights. They'd chosen this apartment together, right after their wedding. She'd loved the floor-to-ceiling windows, the way morning light painted everything gold. Rami had loved the rooftop terrace where he could see the stars, the same stars that looked down on whatever crisis zone currently claimed his attention. "I'm saving lives," he'd said during their last real conversation, the one that had ended with her moving into the guest room. "How can you ask me to stop?" "I'm not asking you to stop," she'd replied, exhausted from years of this same argument. "I'm asking you to stay. There's a difference." His expression had shuddered then, that familiar wall rising between them. "You knew who I was when you married me. I married a man who loved me enough to build a life with me, not someone who uses humanitarian work as an excuse to avoid actually living." The words had been cruel, designed to wound. They'd succeeded. Rami had left the next morning, 3 weeks earlier than planned, and they hadn't spoken about anything substantial since. Amara pressed her forehead against the cool glass. Maybe Layla was right. Maybe 4 years of loving someone who was physically present for less than half their marriage was enough. Maybe she deserved someone who chose her every single day, not just in the brief windows between disasters. But God, she missed him. Missed his laugh, the way he'd pull her close in the morning before they were fully awake, how he'd describe the people he'd helped with such tenderness and hope. Missed the passion in his eyes when he talked about making a difference, even when that passion took him away from her. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Her heart stopped. This was how bad news always came. "Hello?" Amara, Rami's voice, rough with exhaustion but wonderfully, terrifyingly alive. "I'm in the lobby. I know I'm early. Can I come up?" She looked at the clock. 11:20. He was 40 minutes early. "I thought you weren't arriving until midnight. I caught an earlier flight. His voice caught. "I needed to see you. Please, Amara. Let me come up." She should say no, should tell him to wait, give herself time to prepare emotionally for this ending. But her heart overrode her head. "Yes. Come up." The minutes until his knock felt like hours. Amara caught her reflection in the hallway mirror, dark circles under her eyes from sleepless nights, hair pulled into a messy bun, wearing the old university sweatshirt that had somehow become armor against the world. She looked like what she was, a woman who'd been breaking slowly for months. The knock came soft, almost hesitant. Rami never knocked hesitantly. Amara opened the door and nearly gasped. Rami looked wrecked. His clothes were rumpled from travel, dark stubble shadowing his jaw, but it was his eyes that gutted her. Those warm brown eyes that usually sparkled with determination and hope looked hollow, devastated. "Hi," he said simply. "Hi," her voice came out barely a whisper. They stood in the doorway for a long moment, just looking at each other. For years of marriage, and somehow they'd become strangers who once knew everything about each other. "Can I come in?" Rami asked. Amara stepped back, giving him space to enter. He walked past her, his familiar scent, antiseptic and sand and something uniquely him, wrapping around her like a memory. She watched him take in the packed boxes, the half-empty apartment, the evidence of her decision written in cardboard and packing tape. His shoulders tensed. "You're really doing this?" "The papers are on the table," Amara said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I just need your signature." Rami turned to face her, and the raw pain in his expression nearly broke her resolve. "What if I don't want to sign them?" "Rami, please don't make this harder than it already is." "Harder?" His voice rose slightly. "Amara, you're asking me to end our marriage. I think I'm entitled to make it as hard as I damn well please." "You weren't here," the words burst out of her. "You haven't been here for months, Rami." "Not really. Even when you're physically present, part of you is always somewhere else, planning the next mission, thinking about the next crisis. I can't keep living like this, wondering if each goodbye is the last one." "So, your solution is to make it permanent?" His hands clenched at his sides. "To just give up?" "I'm not giving up. I'm choosing to stop breaking." Amara wrapped her arms around herself. "Every time you leave, a piece of me dies. Every satellite call that doesn't come on schedule, I convince myself you're dead. Every news report about violence in whatever region you're working in, I can't breathe. This isn't a marriage, Rami. It's slow torture." "Then why did you stay for 4 years?" His voice softened. "If it's been so unbearable, why didn't you leave sooner?" The question hung between them, loaded with everything they'd never said. "Because I kept hoping you'd choose me," Amara whispered. "Kept thinking that eventually, you'd love me more than you love saving the world. But you don't. You can't. And I can't keep coming in second to your guilt." Rami went very still. "My guilt? You think I don't know?" Amara's voice cracked. "You think I haven't figured out that you're punishing yourself for something? That every mission is penance for some sin you've never told me about?" "Amara. No, we're done, Rami. Please just sign the papers so we can both move on." She turned away, unable to look at him anymore, unable to see the pain she was causing while drowning in her own. But then his hands were on her shoulders, gentle but firm, turning her back to face him. And the expression on his face, vulnerable, desperate, completely unlike the confident doctor who walked into war zones, made her breath catch. "I'm not signing anything," Rami said quietly. "Not until you hear what I've never been brave enough to say. Not until I fight for us the way I should have been fighting all along." Amara's heart stuttered. "Rami, it's too late." "It's not." His hands moved to cup her face, his thumbs brushing away tears she didn't realize were falling. "It's midnight, Amara. Our ending or our beginning? Let me make it a beginning. Please." And despite everything, despite 4 years of hurt and disappointment and fear, Amara found herself nodding. Because hope, terrible and persistent, had never quite died. Rami's hands trembled against Amara's face. He'd faced armed militants, performed surgery in crumbling buildings during airstrikes, delivered babies in refugee camps with no electricity, but nothing terrified him more than this moment. This woman. This chance he didn't deserve but desperately needed. I need to tell you about Kareem, he said, his voice rough. Amara's eyes widened. In 4 years of marriage, Rami had mentioned his younger brother exactly 3 times, and never in detail. It was the wound he kept most carefully hidden. You don't have to. I do, Rami released her face but caught her hands instead, needing the connection. I should have told you years ago. Before we married. Before I let you tie your life to someone so fundamentally broken. You're not broken, Amara whispered. I am, the words tasted like truth and ash. Kareem was 12 when he died. I was 15. We were at the beach in Aqaba, my family's last vacation before everything changed. Rami closed his eyes, pulled back into memory. He went too far out in the water. Got caught in a current. I was supposed to be watching him. I was supposed to keep him safe. Amara's grip on his hands tightened. By the time I reached him, he'd already gone under twice. I grabbed him, tried to pull him back to shore, but he panicked. Fought me, Rami's voice broke. I couldn't hold on. The current ripped him away, and by the time the lifeguards got to him, it was too late. Rami, you were a child. That wasn't your fault. My parents' marriage ended within a year. My mother couldn't loo. At me without seeing Kareem. My father threw himself into work to avoid dealing with any of it. Rami opened his eyes, meeting Amara's gaze. I couldn't save my brother. But I can save other people's brothers. Other people's children. Every life I help is one more person who doesn't have to feel what my family felt. Understanding dawned in Amara's eyes, followed by fresh pain. So, every mission is penance. Every mission is proof I deserve to exist, Rami corrected. That Kareem's death wasn't meaningless if I can prevent other deaths. Do you understand now? It's not that I don't love you enough. It's that I don't feel like I deserve to just be happy when my brother never got that chance. Amara pulled one hand free and pressed it against his chest, over his racing heart. Rami, Kareem's death was a tragedy. But it wasn't your fault, and destroying yourself with guilt doesn't honor his memory. It just creates more loss. I know that intellectually, Rami admitted. But knowing and feeling are different things. Every time I come home, every moment of happiness with you, there's this voice saying I don't deserve it. That I should be working, saving, doing penance. So, you leave, Amara said softly. Not because you want to, but because staying feels like a betrayal of your brother. Yes, the admission felt like bleeding. And every time I leave, I hurt you. Which makes me feel even more guilty. Which makes me take more missions. It's a cycle I don't know how to break. Amara was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then she asked the question he'd been dreading, have you been in therapy? I tried. Twice. Both times I couldn't. Rami shook his head. Talking about it felt self-indulgent when people are dying in places I could help. That's the guilt talking, not logic. I know, he did know. He'd known for years that his coping mechanisms were destroying his marriage. But knowing and changing were different mountains to climb. Amara pulled both hands away, and Rami felt the loss like cold water. She walked to the couch, sinking onto it with exhaustion written in every line of her body. I need you to understand something, she said quietly. My father left when I was 8. Just walked out one day and never came back. No explanation, no goodbye, just gone. Layla was 10, and we spent years wondering what we'd done wrong. Why we weren't enough to make him stay. Rami felt his heart crack. He'd known her father had left but never realized the depth of that wound. Every time you leave for a mission, Amara continued, I'm 8 years old again, watching my father's car drive away. Every delayed call, every extended mission, every time you choose the work over coming home, it's him leaving all over again. My head knows you're different. You're saving lives, not abandoning us. But my heart just knows you're gone, and maybe you won't come back. Amara, I'm so sorry. I never meant. I know you didn't. She looked up at him with eyes full of tears. But intent doesn't change impact. We've both been operating from our wounds, and it's killing us. Rami crossed to her, dropping to his knees in front of the couch. What if we tried to heal together instead of apart? How? Her voice was barely audible. How do we fix 4 years of damage? Honestly? I don't know. Rami reached for her hands again, grateful when she didn't pull away. But I know signing those papers isn't the answer. I know I love you more than I've ever loved anything. And I know that if we end this without really trying to fix it, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. Trying means more than just words, Rami. It means actual change. Therapy. Setting boundaries with your work. Being present even when the guilt tells you shouldn't be happy. I know. It means you might have to choose me over a mission sometimes. Even when people need you. Even when it feels selfish. The words landed like stones in his chest. Rami thought about the phone call he'd received 3 hours ago, the urgent request to return to Syria within the week. He'd planned to tell Amara after they'd talked, after he'd convinced her not to divorce him. Now, looking at her devastated face, he made a decision. I got a call earlier, he said slowly. A refugee camp medical crisis. They specifically requested me because I know the area, speak the language, have established relationships with the local community leaders. Amara's face shuddered. Of course. I told them no. She blinked. What? I told them no, Rami repeated. I recommended 2 other doctors who are equally qualified. I told them I had a personal crisis that required my full attention, and I wouldn't be available for at least 6 months. 6 months, Amara said it like she was testing the words. You've never taken more than 3 weeks off between missions. I've also never been on the verge of losing my wife. Rami squeezed her hands. Amara, I meant what I said. I'm choosing you. Right now, in this moment, I'm choosing to stay and fight for us instead of running away to do penance for my brother's death. Tears spilled down her cheeks. That's not a small thing you're offering. You're not a small thing to me. Rami moved closer, until their knees touched. You're everything. And I've been too damaged and stupid to show you that. But I'm here now. I'm staying. Let me prove I can be the husband you deserve. What if it's not enough? The fear in her voice gutted him. What if we try and still can't make it work? Then at least we'll know we really tried. That we gave it everything instead of giving up because we were scared. Rami brought her hands to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. But I don't think we'll fail. I think we've been fighting alone when we should have been fighting together. Amara was quiet for so long that Rami's heart began to sink. Then she said, therapy. Couples therapy and individual therapy for both of us. Yes. You stay in Amman for at least 6 months. No exceptions, no matter who calls. Agreed. And you talk to me. Really talk. No more hiding behind walls of guilt and duty. When you're struggling, you tell me instead of booking a flight to a war zone. I promise. Amara took a shaky breath. Okay. Okay, hope blazed in his chest. You're saying yes. I'm saying let's try. She cupped his face, her touch gentle. I still love you, Rami. I never stopped. That's why this hurts so much. That's why I was breaking instead of leaving sooner. I love you too, Rami said fiercely. I've loved you since the day you told me my humanitarian work was impressive but my inability to be vulnerable was going to kill me. You were right then, and you're right now. Amara laughed softly, the sound wet with tears. I was so mean to you that day. You were honest. It's what I needed. He moved up onto the couch beside her, pulling her into his arms. It's what I've always needed from you. She melted against him, and for the first time in months, Rami felt something loosen in his chest. The guilt was still there, it would probably always be there, but now there was something else too. Hope. Possibility. The chance to build something real instead of running from shadows. "What do we do about the papers?" Amara whispered against his shoulder. Rami looked over at the divorce documents on the coffee table, at the signature that would end everything if he added his own. "We burn them," he said simply. Amara pulled back to look at him. "What?" "We burn them. Right now. Then we start over. Not pretending the last 4 years didn't happen, but committing to something different. Something better." Rami stood, pulling her up with him. "Unless you want to keep them?" "No," Amara's voice was stronger now. "No, I want to burn them." They walked to the kitchen together. Rami found a metal bowl while Amara grabbed matches. With hands that shook only slightly, they placed the divorce papers in the bowl and set them aflame. Watching the papers curl and blacken, Rami felt something shift inside him. This wasn't an ending after all. It was a beginning. And this time, he wasn't going to run from it. Dawn crept through the windows, painting the apartment in shades of rose and gold. Amara woke slowly, disoriented by the warmth beside her. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming, that Rami's arm around her waist, his breath soft against her neck, was just another cruel trick her lonely mind was playing. Then he stirred, pulling her closer, and she knew it was real. They'd stayed up talking until nearly 4 in the morning. Real talking, the kind they'd avoided for years. Rami had told her about the nightmares he still had about Kareem, about how he'd wake up in field hospitals reaching for a brother who'd been gone for 18 years. Amara had confessed how she'd drive past the airport sometimes just to feel closer to him, imagining his plane landing, him coming home. It had been raw and painful and necessary. Now, in the quiet morning light, reality waited. "You're awake," Rami murmured against her shoulder, his lips brushing her skin. "So are you. I haven't slept well in months. Being next to you again." His arm tightened around her. "This is the first time I've felt at peace since you moved into the guest room." Amara turned in his arms to face him. Rami's hair was messy from sleep, his jaw shadowed with stubble, but his eyes were clearer than she'd seen them in years. Like some weight had lifted just from finally speaking his truth aloud. "We have a lot of work ahead of us," she said softly. "I know." His hand came up to cup her face. "But I'm not afraid of hard work. I'm only afraid of losing you. Rami, last night you said all the right things. Made all the right promises. But," Amara bit her lip, fear making her voice shake. "What happens when the guilt comes back? When someone calls asking for help and people are dying and you feel like you should be there?" "Then I'll talk to you about it instead of just leaving," Rami said. "I'll go to therapy and work through why I feel like I don't deserve to be happy. And if I do take a mission, because eventually I probably will, it'll be something we decide together. Not me running away when things get hard." "You really think you can do that?" "I have to." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "Because the alternative is losing you, and that's not survivable." Amara searched his face for doubt, for the walls he usually hid behind. But all she saw was honesty and determination and love so fierce it made her chest ache. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Me too." Rami leaned his forehead against hers. "I'm terrified I'll mess this up again. That I'll fall back into old patterns." "But Amara, being scared and being paralyzed are different things. We can be scared together and still move forward." She closed her eyes, breathing him in. "When I signed those papers, I thought my heart would break. Instead, I just felt empty. Like I was watching myself make the worst decision of my life but couldn't stop it." "What stopped you from mailing them? From having a lawyer handle everything?" "You." Amara opened her eyes. "I kept telling myself I needed to see you one last time. Needed closure. But really, I think some part of me was hoping you'd fight for us. That you'd show up and refuse to let me go." I'll never let you go again, Rami promised. Not without fighting with everything I have. The intensity in his voice sent heat through her body. Amara became acutely aware of how close they were, of his hand on her face, his body pressed against hers. It had been months since they'd been intimate, really intimate, not just quick, desperate encounters before he left for another mission. Rami, she breathed. He understood immediately. His eyes darkened with desire, but also hesitation. Are you sure? We don't have to rush anything. I meant what I said about earning your trust back. I'm not asking because I trust you completely again, Amara said honestly. I'm asking because I need to feel close to you. Because we just spent all night breaking down walls and I need something real between us. This will be real, Rami promised, his voice dropping lower. I'll make sure of it. He kissed her then, slow and deep, like he was trying to memorize the taste of her. Amara's hand slid into his hair, pulling him closer, needing more. The kiss deepened, years of longing and hurt and desperate love pouring between them. Rami's hands moved over her body with reverence, like she was something precious he'd almost lost. When he pulled back to look at her, his eyes were liquid with emotion. I love you, he said fiercely. I've loved you since the day you challenged me at that medical conference. Since you looked at me like I was more than just my work. Like I was worth knowing beyond the humanitarian hero persona. I love you too, Amara gasped as his lips found her neck. Even when I hated you. Even when I was signing divorce papers. I never stopped loving you. They came together with an urgency born of almost losing everything. Every touch was a promise, every kiss a vow to do better, be better, fight harder. When Rami moved inside her, Amara felt tears slip down her temples, not from sadness but from the overwhelming rightness of being whole again. Afterward, they lay tangled together, hearts racing, skin damp with sweat. That was, Rami started. Different, Amara finished. It felt different. Because we're different now, he pulled her against his chest. We're not hiding anymore. Not from each other or ourselves. They dozed for a while, exhausted from emotional upheaval and physical reconnection. When Amara woke again, sunlight flooded the room and Rami was watching her with soft eyes. What are you thinking? She asked. That I want to take you somewhere, he said. Somewhere we can talk more without the weight of this apartment and all our history pressing down on us. Where? The Dead Sea. We always said we'd go but never made time. Rami sat up, pulling her with him. Let's go now. Today. Just drive down, float in the water, have real conversations without phones or work or anything else interfering. Amara thought about her work schedule, the meetings she had planned. Then she thought about Rami actually suggesting they take time together, actually prioritizing their relationship. Okay, she said. Let's go. They packed quickly, throwing clothes into a bag with the giddy energy of teenagers playing hooky. Driving south through Jordan's desert landscape, windows down and music playing, Amara felt something she hadn't felt in years, lightness. Tell me something I don't know about you, Rami said as they drove through Wadi Rum's red rocks. What do you mean? We've been married 4 years. And we've spent so much of that time not talking about real things. We know facts about each other. I want to know feelings. Dreams. The things you think about late at night when you can't sleep. Amara considered. I want to design a community center in one of the refugee camps you work in. Something beautiful and functional. A space where people who've lost everything can feel human again, even temporarily. Rami glanced at her, surprise and admiration in his expression. You've never mentioned that. Because you never asked what I wanted beyond surface things. And because I was afraid if I showed interest in your work, you'd take it as permission to keep choosing it over me. That's fair, Rami acknowledged. And I'm sorry. Your dreams should have mattered as much as my missions. So now I get to ask you something, Amara said. If you could do anything in the world besides humanitarian medicine, what would it be? Rami was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I'd teach. Maybe at a medical school, training the next generation of doctors. Passing on what I've learned without having to be in the field constantly. Why don't you? Because teaching feels like giving up. Like admitting I can't hack it in crisis zones anymore. Or, Amara said gently, teaching means your impact multiplies. Every doctor you train goes on to save thousands of lives. That's not giving up. That's strategy. Rami's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I never thought about it that way. Because you've been thinking about your work as penance instead of as a calling. There's a difference. They reached the Dead Sea Resort as afternoon heat shimmered off the water. After checking in, they changed into swimsuits and walked down to the famous salty water. Floating together in the buoyant sea, unable to sink even if they tried, felt like a metaphor. They'd spent 4 years drowning in their separate traumas. Now they were learning to float together. I called a therapist, Rami said suddenly. While you were in the shower at the hotel. Dr. Youssef Al-Hassan. He specializes in trauma and grief. I have an appointment next week. Amara's eyes widened. You did that without me pushing you? I did it because I want to be better. For you, yes. But also for me. Rami reached for her hand in the water. I'm tired of carrying Karim's death like a prison sentence. I'm ready to grieve properly instead of running. I'm proud of you, Amara said, tears mixing with salt water. That takes courage. You give me courage. He pulled her closer, both of them floating in the surreal landscape. You always have. They spent hours in the water, talking about everything, their childhoods, their fears, their hopes for the future. By the time they emerged, skin pruned and faces sun-kissed, something fundamental had shifted between them. That night, having dinner on their hotel balcony overlooking the water, Rami said, I want to tell you about every mission I've been on. Not just the highlights, but the hard parts. The failures. The times I felt helpless. You don't have to. I do. Because you deserve to understand what I was doing when I was away. And I need to process it instead of just burying it and moving on to the next crisis. So, he told her. About the children he couldn't save despite his best efforts. About the ethical dilemmas of limited resources and infinite need. About the moments of beauty amid devastation, a baby born healthy in a refugee camp, a family reunited, a wound that healed despite impossible odds. Amara listened, really listened, understanding for the first time the weight he'd been carrying alone. Why didn't you ever tell me these things before? She asked. Because I thought sharing the burden would make me weak. And because part of me felt like I deserved to suffer alone since Karim couldn't tell anyone about his struggles anymore. Rami, suffering alone doesn't honor Karim's memory. It just creates more suffering. I know that now. He reached across the table for her hand. Talking to you today, being honest about everything, it's the first time I've felt like I could breathe in years. We should have done this sooner. We're doing it now. That's what matters. As they watched stars emerge over the Dead Sea,